Welcome everyone on YouTube and Facebook. On Facebook Live, I'm going to wait a minute before people come on. Today we're going to talk about Mary Magdalene. It's a story that's been intriguing me for a long time, and I just want to bring truth to the metaphysical aspect of the things she's teaching that basically has been omitted from the church. So if you're joining me on the replay, let me know. Feel free to comment. I hope it's a glorious day. I live on the central coast of California, and it is beautiful. We're entering into some gorgeous weather after having weeks of rain, which actually, no matter what the news says, we like it. I like the rain because we don't get a lot of rain from like April through or May through October. So when we do get the rain, it's gorgeous. Hi, Saloma. How you doing? I'll wait for a couple more to get on. I am excited about teaching this because it is on my heart. I had to ask myself the question, why am I teaching this? So this will be interesting. So I just want to give you every week, probably for the next 4 weeks or so, what I want to do is I want to teach this according to what the Gospel of Mary actually says, according to some incredible books that I have. Hi, Renee. Hi, Pris. But I also want to teach you about my personal experiences with what I faced having been in ministry. And I also want to teach you about the backgrounds. I'm going to incorporate all of that into one session. This is not a session to rant. It's not a session. It's a session of peace where I can look at truth and I can see my background. I could see what it did, how I deconstructed or whatever you want to call out of it, and how I feel better than ever now, more at peace, more with a metaphysical understanding of what I didn't leave the Bible. Okay, what I did is I removed the narrative, I removed the mask of duality, which we'll talk about, and I replaced it with the magic and the mystery that is there, along with many other truths. So let's get started. First of all, welcome. And to those who come on a replay, welcome too. So let me just tell you a little bit about the Gospel of Mary before I tell you some personal feelings. Okay, it was found in Egypt in 1896 and then left to the care of the Berlin Museum. She is considered the apostle to the apostles, which let's take that out of a religious connotation, which is mainly be considered to be men. She was the first one to see Jesus at the resurrection at the tomb. And we talked about that in the previous videos on light. When she saw him, well, she brought forth metaphysical teachings after she was walking with him for all those years. Jesus had people around him that were both male and female. They were not just male. So there is a narrative that's called the master story that Christianity holds to. And that's why I left. That's why many people have left. But I didn't denounce the mystery and the magic that's still there. So when she was expelled of her demons, it could be quite easily understood that she was in line with her chakras, harmony in her chakras, to enter an awareness of conscious love of Jesus. Because it was only by a conscious love of a conscious energy that she was able to apprehend the deeper statements in the essence of her divine feminine that the guys never did. We'll go into that. Also, she had access to sacred knowledge. If you read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene or you read any books by her, you'll see that what's been hidden is her metaphysical point of view, and we have been kind of sequestered down to a narrative of duality, right, wrong, cause or effect, and that's death. So the books that I'm learning from are a book called The Gospel of Mary Magdalene by Jean-Yves Leloup, and also Cynthia Bourgeault about Mary Magdalene, along with much research online. And so then also, she was in her gospel, she had a different mode of understanding that the masculine would overlook, for she would enter a domain of visionary knowledge. Now we need both. Everyone in them has the masculine and the feminine energy. You cannot exist just on dreams and desires until you implement it with the way to go forward. But in Christianity today, there is no essence of the divine feminine. It's usually just the divine masculine, even in a physical portrayal of men only holding leadership positions, while women are relegated to a glass ceiling. If it's stated or not stated, I've encountered it many times, go this far and no further. So there's a word, if you look at esoteric teachings, there's a word called anthropos. And in both of these books, they talk a lot about the anthropos, to where I had to get an understanding of exactly what that was. Well, the anthropos is a fully realized human being, as one who both integrates and transcends all gender identification. Now, please, don't look at it politically. Don't look at the narrative out there. What I'm saying is that you have to transcend to reach a higher level of knowledge to how you may manifest in this earth, male or female, but inside of you, the energy you carry is both of the mind, which could be the divine masculine, and of the heart, which could be the divine feminine. All we've seen is the divine masculine. More on that later. So the background of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, these are just some simple facts, which I'll go into every week before we actually go into the words in her Gospel. It was about the 4th century. Many of us know this. You can do your own research. It's common to know this. Constantine, by a single edict, converted Christianity from a forbidden cult to a state religion and extricated all the mystical out of it, and it became imperial pomposity. That's what I think Cynthia Bourgeault calls it. And she's a theologian. I am not a theologian, even though I've studied the Bible very deeply for many, many years. This imperial pomposity set up a duality. It says that they took it from a forbidden cult. Well, maybe it should have stayed a forbidden cult, because what we've not been told is that the real roots of Christianity, it was pluralism. Christianity was based upon differences in style, of ethnicity, and temperament. There were Jewish Greeks, Jewish Christians, Greek Christians, Syrian Christians, Aramaic Christians, mystery schools, keepers of the Torah, mystics, ascetics, the Essenes, and more. To bring down the narrative of what Christianity was, however you've seen it, to an us versus them mentality, saved or unsaved, that's pretty ignorant. And we sat in that for so many years. So what it does is that Constantine, in 325, set out the official creed of the Council of Nicaea. I'm not even going to go into it, but just let me tell you, it established the Trinity, it established dualism, it took all the metaphysical aspects out of Christianity, and it removed 23 books, but the divine mind, who is the all of the essence of everything, decided, no, they're not going to be hid. And many of these Gnostic Gospels, as well as the Gospel of Mary, they were uncovered in the Nag Hammadi in Egypt, and they were brought back out into the public, much to the chagrin of the people who tried to lock religion into the narrative. So there, for those who are facts-oriented, you can find plenty of facts on this, whether you believe it or not. And you can tell people this, and they're still not going to believe it. So there is a master story. Now, hear me clearly. We know this in our heart, but we don't. It was beautifully acknowledged in the book by Cynthia Bourgeault that Christianity has a master story. Jesus came to earth to found a religion called Christianity, and he called his male-only disciples to be apostles and priests. Then in the Catholic Church, it was encouraged to be celibate, totally denying the essence of our sexuality in the fullness of our form. In the Evangelical Church, you had apostolic networks and prophetic networks based upon men only in key positions of leadership that denied many times the essence of women, whether subtly or very blatantly. I myself, what I experienced all those years was there was a glass ceiling that I could not penetrate. And I was labeled angry. I was labeled emotional. I was labeled woo-woo. And I was always kept to the glass ceiling to be what? Listen to me carefully. This is personal opinion. I was encouraged to be a good girl, not push the boat that hard, not be courageous, not take a leadership active position, to be the woman that submitted to the religious narrative of submission. The end road of all my efforts was to be a good girl and to be submitted to the man, whether it's the man in the church, whether it's the man in the corporation, whether it's the man in my home. with the essence of the beauty of this woo-woo divine feminine that only talks about love and never raises up the courage to be who a woman truly is. That is what I experienced over and over and over. And in the course of this, I will tell you my experiences. So there's a master story in Christianity, and is this story that Christianity is the end-all be-all of the whole planet. That's ignorant. Selah. The master story asserts that an unbroken chain going from Jesus to the apostles and on to their succession, whether they be elders, ministers, priests, bishops, guarantee the unity, the uniformity of Christian belief and practice. This is evident if you only look. That is why people are leaving the structure, because it is contrived, it is locked down, and it is limited to how much you can express your innovation and creativity. So why was Mary, Bugeaud asks a question, and she says, why was Mary, who was integral in Jesus' history, yet she was so denied, why was she given the first apostolic leadership by Jesus himself to announce the news of the resurrection, but yet we never hear anything about her, and she was not included among the guys? And why was Paul, who never met Jesus in his earthly life, included so much in Scripture, even interpreting and writing the New Testament, and we push forward in the apostolic of a church that we can create, denying the metaphysical? Well, that's why I left a Baptist church. Okay, I went into the charismatic and saw it a little bit better, but even there, it was not as good. So this early Christianity was that it was stripped, to be stripped of metaphysical realities, stripped of Jesus-taught gnosis. This gnosis is not changing anyone's persona or their being by secret rituals or esoteric info. He taught gnosis and set his disciples upon a path of integral transformation, internal transformation, which involves energy, which is not demonic, Reiki healers who are not demonic, auras and chakras who are not demonic. So a label of literalism and a label of duality came upon the Christianity that was meant to be metaphysical in a long line of spiritual beliefs, not the end-all be-all, but they denounced it and made it so linear that when I say it's dual, just think about that. It is based upon duality. Walk an aisle, get saved, go to heaven, go to hell, and perpetuate this narrative even into a political agenda. I'm not going to say anything else. So Mary, it's discovered through the Gospels, she was extraordinarily brilliant and uncanny in her ability to confront the divine masculine and their linear understanding with the divine feminine within her. She didn't let it stay in her. So the divine feminine moved through the teachings that she got, which is the essence of the divine masculine and the divine feminine within her. She lived out what she understood, and she had an ongoing relationship with Jesus, the Master, in the visionary realm, because most of her gospel was written after the resurrection, that makes her privy to teachings that other disciples knew nothing about. Many esoteric, non-evangelical Christians call this the imaginal realm. They believe when it says that Mary met Jesus in a vision in her gospel, this was a place that she transcended time, and they met there, and she became privy to sacred knowledge that could never be understood with the linear mind. Well, that's what we're doing today. That's what we're trying to teach. That's what we're trying to bring forth, because the essence of that teaching reveals the I am in you, reveals the I am in me, the essence of why we were created, the essence of the purpose of our incarnation. It's not to bestow privilege upon a belief system, because true unity in love fosters a forward momentum to change the planet, to change cities, to change our lives. So now let me say this before we go on to talk about the actual reading of the Gospel of Mary, that each week I'm going to go into a little bit about who she is. What's the divine feminine? Is it an archetype? Is she an archetype of the divine feminine? What was her relationship like with Jesus? What was it like? What was her relationship like with the other disciples? How did she live her life? But today I want to tell you why I'm teaching this. So bear with me for just a few minutes. I want to share this. When I discovered this master story in Christianity, I saw it everywhere I went. It went from getting saved in the 90s at the lowest point of my life, thinking I needed something outside myself. So I got saved and started attending churches. I attended evangelical churches. I attended Baptist churches and charismatic churches. And I saw that within each one, there was a master story being perpetuated. And I simply didn't fit the mold. Am I the only one who don't or didn't feel that they fit the mold? I never did, unless I played the game of the part of the good girl. I lived with a continual reality of a glass ceiling, this far and no further, or subscribed to the reality of duality on every level, being pressured to give an altar call for salvation. End your message with an altar call for salvation. Being pressured to subscribe to a narrative that I pushed myself into a submissive role rather than be courageous. And even in my intuition and my prophetic abilities, as I went a little further in them, I was always chastised to go no further than that. Don't go further than that. And so I didn't. So I was always frustrated. Folks, I was angry. Anyone else but me? Any other woman or man out there that's been angry? Yeah, I see it all over Facebook, but I decided to move forward. But when I was angry, when I finally reached the point that I'm leaving all this bullshit, I had to go back and ask forgiveness of a whole lot of leaders, because there were wonderful leaders who stood aside me, but they also were playing the game. Okay, so I had to ask forgiveness. Why? To keep my heart free. I'm not responsible for their walk. I was angry, but you know what? Who wouldn't be, folks? Did we waste our life in those many years? I don't know. See, most men won't even listen to this message. Bravo to the men who do, because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you. I'm just saying the patriarchy is wrong. The man has the essence to be intuitive, prophetic, whatever you call it, by the essence of the energy of the divine feminine within him. That doesn't mean he's feminine in his outward realities. It's a long story. We're not going to go that way. So what happened is I've experienced many realities in the journey within Christianity, but the end all be all, that one moment came when I realized either put up or shut up. I mean, you're talking about all this stuff, about the miracles and the experiences, but you're having people come into a building every week and just sit there and usually listen to a man pontificate on what you should believe without the essence of your being going forth. It hit me when I was in a prophetic meeting, and I've been to many of them. I was to the Toronto revival a few times. I was to Pensacola. I was to the International House of Mike Bickle, who now is having problems that probably could have been predicted. I went to Chuck Pierce's Apostolic Nation in Denton, Texas, where all they did was talk about Israel's connection, and you can't have any connection in Christianity unless you have a connection with Israel. Well, come on, folks. What about divine entanglement in the quantum field? There's no us versus them. And it was science and bringing me back to what my dad said, that all of a sudden I realized it was science and quantum and entanglement and oneness and the scientific experiments that opened my eyes to see the reality of the divine mind. And it was then that I changed. So this message that we'll give for the next 4 weeks is not based on anger or a rant. It's based on truth. And I will incorporate my personal experiences with truth. I told you a couple weeks ago, and I was preaching everywhere. I was preaching in so many places. And there was one place where I went in, I'm going to just repeat this story because it pretty much says it all, where I went in and I felt within me that God said to bring forth the message that their image preceded them into the world, not his. Well, what did that mean? There was a measure of pride and stubbornness. So I gave the message, and many people agreed with me. And when they went to look for the tape the next day, they totally decimated it. It was never to be found. Sounds a lot like what Mary Magdalene went through. So this message is based upon truth, and it will flow within a metaphysical narrative, which the church at large has tried to ignore, suspend, or completely decimate, which they did through Constantine, what they did through Josiah, which they did through the Roman Empire to the Essenes. They totally knocked it out. So this is a master story that places women in a box and places men in a box. So let's get started. Okay, I'm going to go slow with this now, and I'm not going to do these very long. This is, I know it's backward. I forgot to change the camera on this. It's called The Gospel of Mary Magdalene by Jean-Yves Leloup. Easy reading, but he literally translates the gospel. So there's like 19 sections of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Some in the middle are missing, but it does not deny the fact that it speaks truth. So rather than starting at the beginning, I had this thought, let's go to the end and work our way back. Because when you see what she faced from bringing all this metaphysical, intuitive message out, you'll see that when she had to finally admit that they were not going to receive it, it was really shocking to her, and it says she wept. She didn't weep because she felt sorry for herself. She wept because they were misinterpreting the message. So I want to read to you very slowly section 17 of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. I want you to listen with your eyes closed. This is Mary talking to the guys after the resurrection, telling them what Jesus told her. So she's sitting there and she's speaking what Jesus said, and Jesus said, I left the world with the aid of another world. A design was erased by virtue of a higher design. Henceforth, I travel toward repose, where time rests in the eternity of time. I go now into silence. Having said all this, Mary became silent, for it was in silence that the teacher spoke to her. Suddenly, the guys are getting this message. It wasn't the first time they received from Mary, but they're sitting there. And then Andrew began to speak and said to his brothers, tell me, what do you think of these things that she's telling us? As for me, I don't believe that the teacher would speak like this. These ideas are too different from those we have known. And Peter added, how is it possible that the teacher talked in this manner with a woman about secrets of which we ourselves are ignorant? Must we change our customs and listen to this woman? Did he really choose her and prefer her to us? Yes, in a certain way. Now let's take apart those words and let's see what they mean. Most people stop at most people stop at just they stop at the reality of who Mary was, but they never really look at what she said. So let's take that section by section, and let's look at what she was talking about. Jesus says to her, I left the world with the aid of another world. Mary sees clearly in the realm of a higher energy of spirituality flowing within a multidimensional reality. She sees that he's talking about his ascension in light, that his purpose on the earth was to speak to us about light, about our incarnation, which I've talked about in the previous sessions. So she lived in Chronos time. We live in Chronos time. That word in the Greek means the here and now. But she flowed in the essence of being from a Kairos moment, which is the intersection of time and eternity. And it says she met Jesus in a place called the imaginal realm, which we'll talk about in the future. So she's speaking to them what he spoke to her, and she was able to apprehend it because she didn't look through it with a linear interpretation. She looked through it through the point of energy, through the point of a metaphysical adaptation, which you see in her words. And she's looking at the essence of the very essence of Jesus, not his incarnation in a linear time. And this is what the church does. They follow him linearly until he gets to a point in time where suddenly he has meaning. And then he dies, and then he's resurrected, and then it just so happens that the world is saved. That's effing bullshit, folks. I don't know how else to say it. How can that even happen when we're divinely entangled and we're in a flow from many previous applications of truth to proceed further into an application of truth? So Mary was able to see what the guys couldn't see. It did not mean that Jesus didn't speak to the guys or elevated her above them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that she was able to perceive, because of the aspect of the divine feminine in her, those that only perceived with the aspect of the divine masculine never saw the relation to energy. So she truly typified being in the world, but not of the world. The guys were just in the world. And yes, they had experiences, but those experiences, from what I remember being in the church, were always elevated as to something we could achieve rather than something we are. You know, you want to go into a higher realm. Well, Paul did it, they did it, but you need to pray more. You need to seek God more, rather than realizing that we truly are in the world, but not of the world, demonstrating the beauty of light, the beauty of sound, and we are ignorant of knowing it. That's just it. We have downplayed meditation and many other spiritual practices, and we've substituted them to just sit in a church or a synagogue or wherever. Mary didn't do that. She didn't live from that realm. So she interpreted the master story that was linear. She took it out of duality and said, I'm not going to buy this. I'm going to say what I need to say. And she was totally ignored and decimated. That's just truth. So she speaks of Jesus, and then Jesus says, through her, a design was erased by virtue of a higher design. Jesus is saying this. Henceforth, I traveled toward repose, where time rests in the eternity of time. I go now into silence. We can interpret that to be consciousness, the all, where there is no movement, perhaps in the realm of consciousness, but you are surrounded by an incredible love energy, and then consciousness manifests on the earth. That's what Jesus did. Manifested in oneness from the Father within. So when he says he's in repose, it means to savor our individual being as being. That's the I am. Savor the I am. And it was free of all need to prove ourselves or justify our existence through any sort of accomplishment. That was evident in Mary's life. She was never allowed to accomplish anything simply because she was a woman in a patriarchal society that downplayed women on every level. Yet right now, she has something to teach us today. So in the place of the very source of love, Jesus says he moves into silence. She sees him moving into silence because she's able to apprehend what he's saying outside of a linear mindset. He's talking about moving into this place of the divine mind, of the all, which he showed how to move in that within the earth, being led forward by intuition, the divine feminine within him. He was able to move within the divine masculine by getting a focus and then accomplish the focus through the divine feminine by meeting the woman at the well, by meeting the man, the guy, I forget, the woman with the issue of blood, and so many others. So he walked in the realm of eternity, not duality, as the current teaching tells us. And it was not a place to be accessed by action. It isn't how many, folks, I helped start a church in San Francisco for 18 months. on the corner of 16th and Mission. And I remember, just going to be honest here, going and knocking on doors telling gay people that they were going to hell and they needed to accept Jesus. I told Jews they needed to accept Jesus because the person leading it was such duality that we moved in that duality, a mind blind. We didn't even stop to think. We didn't even know. We didn't even know. We weren't allowed to perceive at a level higher than they set. So silence, that she says Jesus moves into the silence. It is not, listen, I don't know how else to explain this. Capture this with your heart, okay? Don't listen with your mind to this. Capture it with your heart. Silence is not the here and now. Silence is beyond into essence. What you reveal in the here and now is the conscious creativity of having known the essence. That's why we're hearing so much of I am that I am. I am. That is my essence into which I will go back into after this transformational time of being in my body is done. I go into the essence. In ancient times, get this, it's called the breast of the Father. The Father is within. I believe the Aramaic word is abum. Within me is the Father, not some external God that I pray to and grovel before. In me is the Father. I and the Father are one. So then Mary goes on to say Jesus' words, and suddenly it says she becomes silent. For it was in silence that the teacher spoke to her. You are not going to hear the reality of your I am essence unless you quiet down. You can read every book, go to every conference. It is in the quieting down of the being still that you know, and most people won't do that. We've been trained for action, that we've been trained even in Christianity, and I speak from that realm because that's the realm I was in for 20, 25 years. There's always a cause and effect in Christianity. You have to prove yourself by your purpose and your call. You have to, what position do you take in the church? What are you going to do? Not who are you going to be, but what are you going to do? So beyond a certain point, Mary's saying, there is only wordless communion. That's being still and knowing. That is wordless communion. Are we willing to go there? I have to admit it was hard for me. It was hard not to do something at the depth of my grief. It was very hard not to think that I had a purpose, that there was nothing around me. I was still programmed to believe I should find a purpose, find a passion, which emanated in something to do. And it was very cliche to say, well, I've discovered myself, therefore I move. No. The silence is wordless communion. And even when I have the monkey mind in meditation, I have to consistently tone it down so that in the silence there is a knowing, and in that knowing is residing in my heart. When I come out and have to face my day because I'm in my incarnation, then I move from the silence and I move from the essence of my being. So then let's go on to talk about what the guys now discover. Then Andrew begins to speak and said to his brothers, tell me, what do you think of these things she's been telling us? As for me, I don't believe that the teacher would speak like this. These ideas are too different from those we've known. Do I even need to say anything more? Isn't that so obvious? First of all, asking the other guys caught in a linear modality who only knew parables. We're going to get to the reason why they only understood parables, and Mary was able to understand essence. Parables was a means of showing love to people that couldn't get beyond the essence of knowing their being. That's why it's stories and all this crap going on in the church. Rather than getting to the essence of their being, they're going to tell you stories and parables, which are a lower energy level, which Jesus did because he was love. Okay? He wasn't going to leave anyone out. He talked to them on their level of understanding and talked to Mary at a very higher level of understanding. So he spoke to them in parables at the level of their consciousness. If you're going to rise into the essence of your being, you're going to have to rise in consciousness. And rising in consciousness means moving out of a realm of duality. Duality. It's cause and effect. I'm going to keep repeating this. It's us versus them. It's my faith over your faith, my belief, my color of skin, my this. It's a tribalism of belief rather than knowing that we are all one. And that comes through the essence of the divine feminine. So these parables that Jesus spoke to the guys with, they didn't leave as much of an implant on their heart as Mary, who was moving in a higher realm of consciousness. So religion today teaches the stories where they're simply unable or unwilling to apprehend the reality behind the story. Like, how many times did I speak prophetically, having had all these experiences with God, trying to tell people what they were, giving accurate words of wisdom and knowledge for years. And it was like it still was underplayed. At the end, Deborah could tell a person sitting in the 5th row, God says, write the book. This is how you're supposed to do it. And everybody in the 5th row is looking at each other in Finland. And finally the woman rises up and says, that's me. Rather than being in awe and wonder that God would reach down and touch the essence of that person into her purpose. No, we're going to return and say, well, Deborah's done preaching. Let me give an altar call right now. You ain't saved. Oh my God. The more I'm preaching this to folks for me to see the ridiculousness of this stuff. So when they speak in parables, when Jesus spoke in parables, seeing they do not see, and in hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand, guys. I'm going to have to reach you at your level of consciousness. You're unable to move up. But to Mary, I can talk to her without words. She can change lives by the essence of just a few words. She doesn't need 1,500 because of that energy was flowing from her. So for those who lack the love and intelligence needed in order to come into relationship with their being, nothing really has meaning. They accept everything in duality. They do not see the invisible which surrounds the visible. They only see the visible. That's why having been a science and math major, when I started studying quantum, it was almost too good to believe. It was like, is this for real? I mean, there's this realm beyond the realm, but we're locked down. Christianity locked me down into believing that I had to access that realm through an action rather than being. So the visible is surrounded by the invisible. So now we know that today, but how many don't know it? Look at the nation. How many don't know it? Anyway, the Gospel of Thomas, I want to tell you something because Thomas parallels some aspects of Mary's. The acceptance of our feminine dimensions is absolutely indispensable if we are to have true access to our being, or even connected to the divine masculine of our being. The union of these two energies, the doing, the being, the emotions, the thoughts. Greg Braden talks about this. Greg Braden is more of a spiritual teacher of truth than most people that are preaching from churches now. He talks about the electricity of the thoughts and the magnetism of the heart, the moving of the divine masculine and the divine feminine to access the potential in the field to able to move. That's what Mary did. That is what Mary did, and she was denied. Maybe that's why we don't hear as much about her, along with many other people. So the Gospel of Thomas says this. Peter answers and says, Mary should leave us, for women are not worthy of their life. That's what Peter says in the Gospel of Thomas, which was also extricated along with the other Gnostic Gospels. Yet we've been taught they were demonic or not able to be listened to. So Jesus' answer is quite ironic. Now listen, don't listen with your head. Listen with your heart to what Thomas answers, what Jesus answers the guys. Okay, you want a woman? All right, she's not accepted as she is. Okay, then I myself will lead her, making her a male if she's going to become worthy like you guys. I will transform her into a living spirit, the anthropos, because any woman changed in this way will enter the divine realm. He is not saying that Mary must become a man. He's saying that she's so incredible and such in union with him, if the only way that you're going to listen to her is that I make her a man, then I love you so much, so be it. but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to expose to the world that you will not accept the divine feminine. Yet if I could change her into a man so that her outward persona moving in the divine feminine will reach you more than the way you're moving now. Man, yeah, hallelujah. So he's not saying that Mary should become a man. He's saying that she must become a living spirit, a fully realized human being. So Thomas says this: when you are able to make two become one, so that a man is no longer male and a woman female, but male and female become a single whole, then you will enter in. You will not apprehend the deeper truths of the, quote, kingdom through the divine masculine alone. And you will not apprehend it through the divine feminine alone. It takes purpose and action. The world knows that better than us in many times. If you have an innate desire to be a doctor, then you're going to have to go to medical school. You're going to have to combine the desire of the heart with the essence of the mind, and you're going to have to access the potential of your life. Simple as that. So now after Mary says all these things, she weeps. And she says, my brother, well, wait, did we say what? Okay. Peter says, how is it possible that the teacher talked in this manner about a woman, about secrets which we ourselves are ignorant? Must we change our customs and listen? So Mary responds to that and she weeps. And then she answers, my brother Peter, what can you be thinking? Do you believe that this is just my imagination, that I invented this vision? Or do you believe that I would lie about our teacher? These are not tears of grief that Mary is crying, but it is the tears of a child, a childlikeness. To enter the kingdom, you must become childlike in your essence as one and surrender. To enter that realm, she was crying because she was speaking truth and they refused to believe her at the moment her heart has most opened to truth. Ever been there? Any of you listening, are you in ministry at all? Have you been in ministry, man or woman? Have you ever exposed the reality of your heart, knowing that you know that what you're saying could help people, that it is truth, and it is downplayed as woo-woo? It is overlooked. It is ignored. When she herself wept because she saw the reality of truth, she addressed these guys with no sense of spiritual hierarchy. She addressed them in oneness. There is no sense of spiritual hierarchy in true spirituality. Jesus came against the hierarchy so much. He did not establish a hierarchy unless it was acknowledged by the church. His people around him were male and female, but it is played out that there was a hierarchy. That's the master story, and it's BS. Get out of that story and be who you're called to be. So she didn't access, she said, do you think I imagine this stuff? Imagination is not fantasy as an imagination of the emotions. She was saying she had the opening. Now, this is what I'm going to speak on next week because I want to understand this more. She entered a place of the imaginal realm. This is not imagination. Creativity flows from this realm. But she entered a place of physical space-time, which leads into a vaster experience of space-time. She met Jesus in his ascended, resurrected form after the resurrection. Even in this realm, she says, I saw him and met him in a vision. It was not in her head. It was the physical lifting up into a higher dimension of light because she was able to access truth. So her experiences are the resurrection of being within her. You can't experience the resurrection no matter how many, I love this stuff. I love this stuff. This is healing me as I'm speaking it. You can't access the power of the resurrection through words. Have you been resurrected? Are you being resurrected and lifted up into higher truth, into higher dimensions of love? Are you being translated up into the essence of your incarnation, moving in light in this earth? So her experiences of the resurrection, it was the manifestation of light and heat, peace, love, confidence, and patience. You want to call it the Holy Spirit? Call it the Holy Spirit. You want to call it the anointing? It's greater than the anointing manifested in the earth realm. It is a place of meeting in the silence, where silence is the communion between the divine mind, God, source, and you. So Peter is backing up. And Levi, who's Matthew. So next week we'll talk about that realm, the imaginal realm, because I need to understand it a little bit more. It was never talked about, so I need to understand it before I teach it to you, where she met Jesus. That'll be in another section of Mary Magdalene's gospel. So Peter is listening, and suddenly Levi stands up, Matthew, and says, Peter, you've always been hot-tempered, and now we see you repudiating a woman just as our adversaries do. Yet if the teacher held her worthy, who are you to reject her? Surely the teacher knew her very well, for he loved her more than us. Why? Is there a level of hierarchy in the love of God? Is there stages in the love of God? Is there roots to ascension? No. It's very simple. It's just the awakening of the I am essence in you. That is what it is. It's not a hierarchy. Men are no better than women. Women are no better than men. Children can have experiences that so like cause us to live in awe and wonder that they've said these things. It is the consciousness of an individual. And so Levi is confronting Peter, and basically he's saying, oh God, shut up, Peter. Peter was always portrayed to us as like kind of dumb and ignorant. Did God not love him? No, absolutely. He was just not in tune with anything of a higher nature. So that is why he learned in parables. And that's why looking at Mary, maybe he was frightened. Ever, as a woman in ministry, ever felt like how many times I would go up there and realize I had to say things, but I knew that it was going to pay the price. Do you know how many churches I've preached in? Hundreds of churches. I was a pastor with the Assemblies of God for 5 years. I was an associate pastor, but not in women's ministry. Sam was wanting me to take over the church. He believed in me, many of the people that I worked in, but I decided it wasn't for me. I saw a lot of BS in that. And I want to add one more thing. A lot of the accusations that came at me were also from women. So it's not just the patriarchy, the divine feminine and women who's telling everybody be a good girl, that old narrative that we lived in, that you have to be a good girl, don't rock the boat so much. They were the ones that also pummeled me with calm down. Oh, you're just angry. You're just this. You're always putting titles on me and restrictions until in my anger, I had to get away. So Levi's saying this, and I'm going to end soon. So at first, Peter wants Mary to reveal unknown teachings. Here's what happens, because this is the end of the Gospel of Mary. He's all for listening. You can put on a good act. That I Googled just the other day the churches in my area on the Central Coast of California, and I didn't Google Catholic or Episcopal or that, because I knew I Googled evangelical churches, and what I found is in 99% of them, every lead position is held by a man. And you know what the women hold? Tell me, ladies, if you've been in the church, what were the women allowed to hold positions in? I'm waiting. Yeah. Children's ministry or women's ministry, maybe worship, maybe administration, but God forbid that they would have any leadership position that would direct the church in the essence of the divine feminine. So Peter was responsive at first, and then he shuts down and rejects her completely. This is duality in its finest. So you see, the narrative of the simulation that we're living in, it's getting less and less correct to denounce women in Christian ministry. So they're fudging it and they're changing things. But they haven't changed the narrative. They're just throwing bones and throwing the scraps still to this day. And that is why many are leaving the church, and rightly so. So the continual opening and closing of the psyche, Peter opening and closing, accepting, not accepting, listening, not listening, linear duality, a little bit of a spiritual quantum reality, that constant opening and closing of the psyche, which is the human soul, mind or spirit. It's like they put a lid on their own heart. and it opens, but then it closes where it gets too dangerous. And then they open it, and then it closes if it gets too emotional. And then they open, and if it closes, if it affects their Joel Osteen status of $350 million to promote lies behind a pulpit, and people are in his sanctuary giving money to someone who's a multi-millionaire. Do I need to even say more about that? That is ridiculous, folks. We are ignorant if we keep following that. So the opening and the closing of the psyche in response to the pneuma, which is the spirit, the soul, or the creative force of your connection, of your higher self in a higher dimension with God. But you're opening and closing it, you're still living in duality. So let us, and then it ends with this, 19 of the gospel. It says, therefore, let us atone, Peter says, and let us become fully human and anthropos, so that the teacher can take root in us. Let us grow as he demanded of us and walk forth to spread the gospel without trying to lay down any rules and laws other than the house he created. Well, that was easily said and done, but they didn't follow through. They didn't follow through. What they did is that they then perpetuated the lie, which if you actually research this and you see how many lies are, how the Bible is, it's not, only, yes, it has truth, but it's also a book of lies. It's been narrated by men who were formed in religion. It's been downplayed. Now, have I denied it as a spiritual book? No, it's just not my only spiritual book, and I go where God is leading me. So how do I end this until next week? I hope this helps. I'm getting to the point in my life, and I've always been there, but in my heart, I see it now that I just need to speak what's in me. It's like everything in me is telling me, Deborah, you're healed. You know, you love men, you love women, you are a forgiving person, you're a kind person, but I choose me over everybody. And because I choose me, I am neither afraid of what you think of me, but I am also open to hear correction. I am open to hear challenge. I am open to know that when I'm wrong, I will ask forgiveness. I am walking in a destination of being the anthropos, being fully realized human in my incarnation, knowing what to say yes to, what to say no to. This is an incredible time in our lives, folks. Don't make it too spiritual and don't make it too linear. You are grounded as a person in your humanity, and there's a reason why you're here. So I'll end with this, I will end. I wondered, I didn't want to teach this. I didn't want, because there's a lot of anger that stirs up in me when I realize what I faced and how I submitted to it and how I was the good little girl. And without a shadow of a doubt, I woke up one morning and I heard a voice say to me, stop being a good girl and be the woman you are called to be. I would say that to men, stop being a good little boy and be the man you are called to be. That is where we are right now. And I am not afraid to speak. Do you know why? It's very simple. When you have nothing to prove, you have nothing to lose. Contrary to what you may think about me, folks, I have nothing. My friends know I'm pretty much empty. I've been stripped of so many things in the physical reality of my life that I've had to look beyond myself. I have nothing to prove and I have nothing to lose, and therefore I have locked into the essence of my messages in this curiosity river that is uniquely me. So we'll stay on this topic, and I didn't even realize it, but when I wanted to end this topic is the week before Easter, which seems pretty in accordance. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it very much. Read the book by Jean-Yves Leloup on the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. It's an incredible book. He's a theologian. He loves the facts. And so I thank you for listening from the bottom of my heart. Post your comments, share it. I love each and every one of you simply because I believe in you. I just believe there's more to your life than you know. So thank you for listening. I'll read the comments later. After this, I usually go to the ocean and I just sit by the water and let the ocean talk to me, because believe it or not, I even need encouragement. When you just put it all out there, you go, oh my God, did I say too much? Was I wise? Was my anger showing? So I have to deal with all that stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope this has blessed you beyond measure. Till next week.